All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back again with another Billionaire Brown experience. We are here today. I know a lot of you are on Instagram as well as Facebook, and you're talking about the conversation has already started in regards to narcissists, empath, sociopaths, all of that stuff. So we have a doctor here today that's going to shed some light on that. Dr. Rita, if you would like to say hello.
Hi, thanks for having me on the show.
So let's start from, I guess, the beginning. How did you come onto this journey?
I've been on, a journey of self-discovery and since I was a kid, and so, this most recent part, addressing people that are empaths and narcissists has really only been going on almost 2 years now.
Okay.
When I came to the realization that many of the relationships that I had been in have been pretty freaking toxic.
Okay.
And sometimes you just don't know that you don't know. And in the last relationship I was in, it was kind of like somebody pulled a giant Band-Aid off my head. I mean, I work as an intuitive. People think I'm really super smart. And so it was just kind of shocking to me.
What was shocking to you?
To have that realization, to, have that life experience and not even see it, to just be completely blind to what was going on in my life.
Okay, so it sounds like there was a lot of red flags or signs that you ignored for a long period of time.
Yeah. And at the time, I don't even think that I would identify them as red flags. I just accepted too much, because, one of the things that I believe is that people that get into dysfunctional relationships, toxic relationships, don't necessarily know what right looks like. And so they just do what they do. And, there's a line that they learned somewhere in their life. Like, if you cross this line, that you're like, I'm done, I'm over, and I'm out the door. But if the person doesn't cross that line, then it is what it is.
So could you share some maybe examples of what you didn't know, but I guess looking in hindsight, you would say that they are red flags?
Sure. So, many times it's like you end up in a if you're in a relationship and you spend more time walking around on eggshells versus being happy, then that's not a functional relationship. If you stand up for yourself and have some kind of boundary about what you want to do or who you are, and the response you get consistently, everybody has their thing, and in a healthy relationship, you express what you want or what you need, and the other person has the opportunity to respond back. And it might be a trigger for them, and you have to kind of work that out or just say, adios. But in a dysfunctional relationship, there might be something that they just don't like freaking anything.
Yeah.
And so the abused person ends up being the one that's constantly adjusting and modifying and correcting and not doing, which ultimately leaves you not feeling happy. Many times, especially with narcissists, there's what they say, which is always the big lie, and what they do, which is usually nothing, or whatever they feel like doing, which doesn't have anything to do with what you want, what you need, what you ask them for. And so I think the biggest thing is many times we have those red flags. We feel dissed, we feel like someone isn't treating us right, but we ignore them. But again, if you grew up in a toxic household, you're trained to ignore them, or you're trained to just like take it and kind of go over there, and then you discharge it and you come back for more. You can't divorce your parents when you're 8 years old. You can't, kick your brothers and sisters out of the house if you're in a not happy situation. So you just learn to put up and shut up. which is really sad to say, but it's true.
Yeah, and then it also almost seems like we also get into a place where we say, "Oh, that's just the way that person is." Oh, no, that's just them.
Hmm. Very much so. And then there's another piece where you get into the relationship and you don't want people to know. There's a level of shame. There's a level of shame of your own story, and then there's a level of shame of what's going on because you don't want to hurt that other person. And so, you just suck it in and make up excuses for them or kind of cover over it and try to present to the world that everything is okay when it's not necessarily.
Okay, so let's unpack because a lot of I know the listeners that we have they're very familiar with narcissists. I would like for you to explain that as well. But empath,
Empath.
empath. What is an empath, and what are some traits of an empath?
Sure. So an empath is someone who's very sensitive to the energy around them. There are some people, no, I'm going to back that up. We are all designed to experience what's going on around us. If we think of our pets, you can kind of like throw them a dirty look or whatever, and they might run off. Or, because you can sit there and like say something to your pet in a certain voice and they'll respond, but you can say the exact same thing in a kind of loving voice and they'll be like, oh.
Mm-hmm.
And so empaths are sometimes identified as being like psychic sponges that they just take on the energy of people around them. And so with that, especially if you tie that to a dysfunctional family, they can use that sensing to try to negate what's going on. I'm very empathic. And so if the person that I'm with or the situation that I'm with is uncomfortable, like they're upset, there's some weird thing going on, you feel it in your body. And for me, sometimes it's like, all I wanted to do is just stop and end. It's like, so what do I need to do to have this end? I joke around, and I think Walmart should pay me for my little promotion that I give them all the time. But I think your listeners will be able to relate to this. People that are very sensitive to energy, sensitive to their surroundings, many times have a hard time going to places like Walmart or going to a concert because it's just overwhelming with the energy. I live near Shreveport, Louisiana. Mm-hmm. And so we had gone into Shreveport and I was like, let's go to lunch. And we were right by Margaritaville, which is a casino restaurant thing. And we walked in the door and kind of got in the building a little bit. And there was all the slot machines and lights and what best bells and whistles. And I was like, okay. Because it's just I just get overloaded, and then wander around aimlessly and get lost. And it's not very pretty. And so if people have that experience and they can recognize that within themselves, then they might consider the fact that they are sensitive to energy and they are empathic. Empathic people tend to be the healers, and I'm going to say the doctors and nurses, but it really goes further than that. People that are involved in like the Lions Club or, work in, any area where you're of service to other people and wanting to help humanity, and that could even be an insurance agent, because they're in that kind of a wanting to help and support people, because if the energy is calm, smooth, your world is better.
Nice. Whereas, all right, so let's do a narcissist. How would you define a narcissist?
So a narcissist is someone who, classically they say they lack empathy. So an empath has plenty and a narcissist doesn't have any or very little, so they're kind of opposites on a spectrum. Where an empath wants to go and help and fix, a narcissist wants to have their needs met. They tend to be very attention seeking. They, in an overt where it's like me, 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 or in a more covert way where they get on their pity potty and, oh, well, I got fired from my job. And so you're still giving them attention, even though they're not jumping around pointing at themselves, which is what people see as the classic narcissist. Um, but really it's all about them getting their needs met. And one of the things that makes it be very challenging is that a narcissist does what's called a false front. And so when you first meet one, they present themselves as being kind and loving and helpful, these great people. But once you get to know them, or once you you say, well, no, that's not working for me, they can really turn on you. And there are stories of, like church people, and when they're at church, they're kind and loving and all kumbaya. And once they get home, the dynamics change and they beat their children. And, and it's just fake. I mean, it's just fake, because that the person on the inside is not what's being presented on the outside. So for everybody, it's just really confusing.
Got it. And what would, so a toxic relationship, you mentioned that. How would you define a toxic relationship?
When there's just not a give and take between the two individuals. They say relationships are supposed to be 50-50. I think if you ask any woman, 60-40 is like a really good one.
No.
No offense. But I think women take on a lot of the domestic, in today's day and age, because women take on a lot of the domestic roles. They do the cooking. If there's children, they do a lot of the child rearing, and they have jobs. Back in the day where the woman stayed home and that was her job, I think it was more even because they each had their role. Today, I think it's just a little more uneven because it's just assumed that that's what the woman is going to take care of. And so, but if you're in a toxic relationship, it can become really imbalanced where it's like 90-10, where one person is doing 90% of the work or giving 90% of the energy or making sure that that other person's needs are being met, where the other person isn't really doing anything except what they want.
Right.
And so you have to be happy with that little bit that they want to give.
That little 10%.
That little 10%. I mean, I was in a relationship with this guy we won't go into a whole lot of detail. And he took care of the yard, and watered and planted stuff, and so I couldn't complain that he didn't do anything, but he liked it, so he did it. But if it was something he didn't like, like wash the dishes, so there was just a limit, this is my world. This is what I enjoy in my world. And anything outside of my world is not my problem. And if you try to make it my problem, I'm going to turn around and make it be your problem because it's just easier for you to do it than have to deal with me.
And so is that, before I want to ask you about a dysfunctional family as well, but I want to make sure we understand this part. So you said, all right, so that 90-10. So this person, they like doing the lawn, they like doing all these things because they enjoy it. So I'm assuming you're doing the other 90%. Does this person not realize that you also don't like a lot of your 90% that you're doing? Or do they think that you, they don't.
They don't care.
Okay.
Even though, again, you get that, this is where it gets tricky. You get that false front where it's like they can act like they care and say, they might use I'll take care of it tomorrow. Mm-hmm. I'll take care of it tomorrow. Oh, no, I'm going to take care of it. And, and now you got grass that's 2 feet tall and it still ain't mowed, you know,
But I'll do
or
it tomorrow.
whatever, because they don't really feel like doing it.
Okay, I got you. All right, so now I had these four things that you mentioned: empaths, narcissists, toxic relationship, dysfunctional family. And then I want to get a little bit about what's inside of that book. And I'm gonna put the show notes in the details, guys. I'm gonna put the book details in the show notes so we know how we can actually pick it up and connect with Dr. Rita. But dysfunctional family, based off of hearing you speak, it sounds like a lot of what you're talking about, that's like the foundation of some of these challenges we're having with empaths, narcissists, toxic relationships. Is that true?
Very much so. We learn how to experience the world around us, what's safe, what's not safe, how we interact with people growing up. So by the time we're 18, even before that, it's like we have some well built-in programs, kind of like a computer program, that dictate how we interact with ourselves, how we interact with other people. And so if you're brought up in a loving, supporting, nurturing environment, then that's what you're going to expect in your other relationships. But if you grow up in a family where it sucks, then you're really not going to expect too much.
And do too much too, right?
Potentially.
Okay.
And that's one of the parallels that you find in people that tend to be very empathic and very narcissistic, is that they both come from families of trauma. For the most part, that's really my assessment. The empath uses that skill or hones that skill because, mom's drinking again. And now I have to be careful because, she's going to that place and I can tell, and to kind of ward off evil. And a narcissist, well, scientifically, they've identified that, many come from, having severe trauma growing up.
Mm.
It's just they don't deal with it in the same way.
Okay. Mm. Can a narcissist have you ever seen someone go from a narcissist to not being a narcissist? Because some people say it's curable, some people say it's not.
I think that it depends on where they are on the spectrum. It is hard work. One of the things that's required to heal yourself of being dysfunctional, thus not getting into dysfunctional relationships, et cetera, is really going inside and looking at yourself, and identifying what's going on with me and why am I reacting this way, and can I modify who I am and what I'm doing to present in a more healthy way. Individuals that are narcissists really aren't interested in looking, and they aren't really interested in fixing it. And so even though my book, The Dysfunctional Dance of the Empath and Narcissist, says narcissist, it's like, it doesn't necessarily look at them in a very bright way. And my feeling is that probably not one would ever read it. And if they did read it, they would say, oh, that's so-and-so and not me. It's not me. It's this other person. That's my boss. That's this person, but never really relate it to them and their experience.
Huh. Wow, that's interesting. So you feel that if a narcissist was to read your book, The Dysfunctional Dance of the Empath and Narcissist, you don't feel that they'll connect to it like, wow, I do that. Well, that's me.
Not really.
No?
Not really. Maybe somebody that was really interested in changing, maybe someone who that has been brought to their attention over and over again, that they finally got, the message, well, maybe this is something that I need to do, but just on a casual basis, no. People that are empathic, however, tend to always are working on themselves, and there's always this level of self-improvement and this level of self-growth that they're looking to attain, and so they tend to be the more ready ears for this message.
Is there like do you have like a checklist on, like, even if it's a short check, is there a checklist in this book where I can identify, there's a few things I can ask myself, like, if I am a narcissist?
You know, I didn't even think to do that. I don't have a checklist in the book, but it goes into a lot of detail about their behavior. Um, the point for me writing the book was to help people that constantly find themselves in toxic relationships, to heal themselves. But, someone that's a narcissist, so one of the characteristics, excuse me, of someone being a narcissist is when their relationship ends, they just, move on. They don't do any self-assessment. They don't try to figure out what they've learned. They just, there are stories where a relationship ends and by the next day, the person is involved with somebody else. They've moved in with somebody else by the end of the week, and then it's devastating to the former partner to find out. It's like, wow, did you just not care about me that much that you can move on in a week? But they just don't process in the same way. And so there's like, they don't feel remorse. They don't, I'm not a narcissist, so it's a little hard for me to relate to that mentality. But from a person that's an empath or someone that is interacting with one of these people, there are just telltale signs and behaviors that it was fascinating. I have to tell you, it was fascinating researching this material because there's like vocabulary for some of the crazy freaking things that these people do. And it's like, oh, well, what's this? And you look it up, it's like, oh my God. I swear to God, there were some things that I discovered that I didn't even know.
Like what? What's something?
Okay, so there's a concept called gaslighting. And so in general, it is they want to make you kind of feel like you're going crazy, So if they say, if something happens and you go, well, did you do that? They'll say, no, I didn't do it. Well, you must have done it, and just, there's a certain level of denial. I'm kind of really simplifying it.
Mm-hmm.
But it really makes you crazy. So true story. So I live in a 2-story house and I had a pair of like summer shoes that were sitting on the bottom of the stairs, and it was summer. So I was like, well, do I want to take them upstairs or do I want to just leave them on the stairs and I can just slip them on if I want to go out? And so I came down one day and one shoe was missing. Who takes one shoe? So I'm looking around because I already knew that the guy I was with did something with my shoe. So I'm looking under the sofa and looking here and looking. I looked everywhere. And I said, well, where's my shoe? Well, I didn't take it. And I'm like, well, the choice is that you took it or the dog took it, which I had a toy poodle. The dog wasn't taking anything. And he's like, no, I didn't take it. You must have lost it. And he just put it all back on me. You did it, you did it, you did it, you did it. You lost your shoe. Okay, so embarrassing as this is to say, so about 6 months later, I was doing a really deep cleaning and I took everything off this bookcase and was dusting everything. And I found my shoe behind some pictures that were on the bookcase. It's like, hey, I found my shoe. Oh, I must have, set it there when I answered the door. It's like, why would you set it behind pictures in a bookcase?
And one shoe.
One shoe that he didn't do anything with. You know what I mean? It's just like psycho stuff. And I thought he was just like really psycho until I read about gaslighting. And it's like, holy crap. He's not the only one on the planet that does that.
And it's always very subtle things. That's funny you said the one shoe. It's always subtle. It's not like nothing big usually.
Well, and it's upsetting to the person that's looking for the one shoe. It's just And he could have just said, oh, it's over here. Because it wasn't even like it was weeks and weeks before I noticed the shoe was missing. It was, like the next day I went to put the shoes on. I came downstairs and there was only one shoe. So, how do you forget something like that so fast?
It's very interesting. I'm sure people can actually relate to this, especially when you're talking about this topic. So let's get to the book, The Dysfunctional Dancer. Why did you write the book? And I'm curious to know why did you put the dance part in there? What do you mean by the dance?
Okay. So I wrote the book. Okay. So the guy that hid the shoe, that relationship ended. And that's kind of the point where the Band-Aid came off. And so I'm kind of a consummate researcher. So this book is book number 6 for me. And I was doing my own research. I was doing my own homework to heal me. And I was just uncovering all kinds of stuff and all kinds of material. And I felt like it was important for me to, it's not a memoir, but kind of document my journey of discovery to support other people to discover themselves so that they don't have to recreate this situation in their life over and over and over. Because many times it's like people will get into a relationship and the relationship fails and their knee-jerk reaction is to blame the other person, for what was going on. And we don't think to look at ourselves. One relationship is one thing, but when you're working on 3, 4, 5, 6, where you seem to have the same situation going on this over and over and over again, then maybe it's not that you're attracting them. Maybe there's something going on in you that is either attracting them or, as one, I think Lisa Romano stated, was you're letting them stay. So as far as the dance, there is a tete-a-tete that happens between, and I'm going to say a wounded empath, because that's usually what happens, and a narcissist, in that the empath, just because of their need to heal. Okay, so when you get into that, like, I need to fix you part, you're kind of moving into codependency. There's a certain level of wounding within the person that needs to be healed, because then it's just like, I don't care. And so a narcissist looks for those kind of people. And so the dance is that the empath wants to give and wants to co-create and wants to give. And the narcissist is more than happy to take. And the more the empath or more the narcissist wants to take, the empath is happy to give. And so it just becomes this very dysfunctional, funky relationship that happens, where it might start off in one place, but given enough time, it might start off in that kind of 50-50 place, but given time, it will slowly progress until you're in that, 80-20, 90-10 situation. And, they basically have sucked the life right out of you.
And you're saying it's usually around 90-10.
I'm just saying it's not always 90-10.
Not always, but you can pretty much.
It can. And I think the other big sign kind of going with those numbers, I've been in some 90-10 relationships. I've been in some that weren't quite so bad, 80-20, 70-30. But where it becomes noticeable, how's that, is, okay, so I'm in this mode of I'm doing the 70-30 or 80-20, and I'm okay with it because I have a lot of energy and I like to do stuff, and that's just me. But now I'm sick. I hurt myself, I have the flu, whatever it is, and I'm laid up in bed, and I'm not able to cook dinner. I'm not able to do these things. In a healthy relationship, your partner will work to kind of fill that gap, fill some of the gap, fill any of the gap. If it's a dysfunctional relationship, you might get a dinner. You know, you might get like a little nugget of something, but you know, you're still left to having to take care of everything. So now you're sick and you feel awful and you're getting out of bed to take care of stuff that they should be more than able to take care of.
All right. And
if they wanted to.
Got you. And I've seen a conversation online that started with, I have narcissistic traits, but I'm not a narcissist. Is that possible?
Okay. So everyone has a certain level of narcissism in them. You know, being narcissistic is what, or having a self-interest is what makes us excel in what we do, you know, and makes us be more whole. You know, if we didn't take care of ourselves at all, then who would we be? You know, so there has to be a certain level of self-preservation, self-survival, but there's a line, you know, there's a line to loving yourself. You know, and it's interesting because people that are wounded empaths, it's like they don't really learn how to love themselves. You know, empath or narcissists are really good at loving themselves. You know, and so, yeah, there can be a fine line between, you know, having narcissistic traits and being just really narcissistic. You know, because again, it's a spectrum, but it is for our self-interest to have some narcissistic traits. It's when when you're unwilling to compromise that it becomes more of an issue, I think.
All right. So you mentioned earlier also, all right, so in regards to the dysfunctional dance of the empath and the narcissist, it's basically you're talking about that dance between the empath and the narcissist, right? What else can we look forward to finding in this book as well?
So the book is, you know, so it really talks about that dance, you know, what it is to be an empath, what it is to be a narcissist, what that dynamic is like, you know, more from the, you know, empath's point of view of looking at the relationship with a person that's a narcissist. So you can understand, because I think many people don't really understand, you know, and that was part of the journey to understanding. But the book really does take a very, very, very hard look at what's going on inside of me. You know, why am I choosing to get in these relationships? What and why? You know, it looks at our own history. It causes us to take an evaluation of who we are, where we came from, and from that point, getting the opportunity to make some changes.
In the book, does it touch on, because you were just talking about like because when a lot of times when you're growing up, it's, you know, if you keep getting to a toxic relationship, more than likely it's going to be you that's the problem, right? However, is that always true though?
No, I mean, how do I explain it? So there's two pieces. You know, one, you could get in a relationship with someone who's a great person, but because of your own junk, you know, you don't have any boundaries, you don't set any limits, and so now you've trained them to kind of ignore you, and ultimately in your mind it's like, wow, they're really abusive to me, but you've trained them to be that way. But many times also it's like you get into a relationship with someone who's just really not very good. And so my point is that it takes two to tango. See, that dance thing comes back up again. Yeah. And so we have to take responsibility for our part in the relationship and what we're bringing to the table or what we're not bringing to the table, because you can't change something unless you understand what's wrong.
Right. You're saying one of the best ways to acknowledge if you're in those type of situations is when it's sometimes it's a bad time in your life, whether, like you said, if you're sick, because like you said, if it's a 70-30 deal and you're good with the 70, all right, cool, I'm good with the 70. Mm-hmm. But if you can't do something for whatever the reason may be, and it's not a 40-60 or maybe even a 50-50 during those periods of time where you need it and can't do it, then that's something you need to pay attention to.
Mm-hmm. You know, yeah, I mean, I feel like that other person needs to be able to step up to the plate to the best of their ability.
Right. There should be some type of adjustment.
There should be some kind of an adjustment versus nothing.
Right, because I think that's
very little.
I think that's where we get confused, but that's the first time that I've heard that perspective on it, that viewpoint where, all right, yeah, 70, I mean, because 70-30 could be good. Maybe that's how it's going to work. It's just 70-30, but when things, I think that's really big for us.
It is big.
Know. I've never heard that before, actually. Never ever. That's good.
I mean, and with that, you know, even if they're not able to, you know, so if it's 70-30, you know, and what they're able to do is throw in that extra 10%, you know, it's like, you know, like I've been married too many times, you know, so one of my husband was actually not a toxic relationship. Thank God. And, you know, but he didn't really cook, you know, so if I was laid up, you know, okay, he didn't cook, but he would go get food. You know, he didn't just be like, you know, you're on your own because you're the food queen. You know, and so it worked out. Or, you know, when you're in a relationship, you know, you play on each other's strengths. You know, like I hate vacuuming. I mean, I hate vacuuming, you know? And so, I mean, I'll clean a toilet before I'll vacuum any day, you know? So if you're okay with vacuuming, I'm good with that, because I'll go clean a toilet, because I don't know what it is about vacuuming. I just don't really like it. You know, and so you know, compromise is just a really big part of it, you know, where you feel like your needs are getting met. And so in those situations where I was laid up and he went and got dinner, I felt like my needs were being met, because now I didn't have to get up and go cook because he took care of it.
So would it be safe to say, I've heard this as well on the topic of, you know, toxic relationships. And if someone's listening to this right now, someone listening to our conversation right now, and let's say they're in a relationship with a narcissist, what do you recommend for that person? They know for sure. They go out, they read the book. They're like, oh my goodness, I'm solidified. I'm definitely in this toxic relationship. What do I need to do next?
Okay. You know, so one of the things that I learned, so this was one of my aha moments.
And wait, before you go, is how do we connect with you? Maybe someone also wants to come to you in private. How do we connect with you? Your website? Do you have an email? You have social media? How can we connect with you before you share with us that?
Okay, so now I just forgot the question, but that's okay.
I'll bring it back.
So my website is soulhealer.com, soulhealer.com, soulhealer.com. You can find me on Facebook, Dr. Rita Louise on Facebook, and I am Psychic Doc on Twitter.
Okay, excellent. So again, the question was, if you're I just finished reading The Dysfunctional Dance of the Empath and Narcissist. And right before I read the book, I actually listened to this conversation, right? And I'm in this toxic relationship. And some people say, you know what, you shouldn't tell a narcissist that they're a narcissist. Some people say you should. What do I need to do next? What are my next steps?
Okay. So I think the first step, you know, once you come to that realization is this something that you want to do for the rest of your life? You know, and I was saying, you know, before we went to the whole website thing, you know, one of the things that I learned is that it's our job to make ourselves happy. And so if you spend more days unhappy, or as I said earlier, walking around on eggshells and just not really sure what you can or should do, then you might consider, do I want to stay? And for some people, that's a really hard scenario to work through, whether you have children, young children, you're not in a financial situation to make that happen. Or you might be in a situation where your partner is very abusive and you're scared for your own safety to go. But again, that decision needs to be made, because there are countless people that will stay in an unhealthy situation just because they're too afraid to go. I had a client once. Well, it wasn't a client. It was this woman who got a reading at a fair, and she wanted to know when her husband was going to pass away. And so, I asked, because I can look at different people's energy, and I'm like, well, he doesn't seem sick. Because I have people that come and it's like, my mom is 83. She's not doing real well. Do you think she's going to make it? I will respond to that kind of question, because there's eminency to it. But I'm looking at this person and they seem fine. There wasn't anything wrong with them. And bottom line, she didn't want to divorce him. She hated him, but didn't want to divorce him because she didn't want to give up her stuff. And so there are a lot of people that will stay in a situation that they're not happy because they don't want to give up their stuff. They don't want to give up the lifestyle in which they become accustomed, etc. But if you make that choice, if you make the choice to stay, then it's just going to be more of the same, because they're really not going to change. You can suggest counseling, but, they can just lie to the counselor and make you be the bad guy. It can happen. If you choose to go, then you really need to come up with an exit strategy, and look at where you are in that moment. Financially, can you make that happen? Where you're living, is it your house? Is it their house? Can you, there's just a whole process of just really defining, because everybody is in a different situation based on what's going on, and just really coming up with a plan to take that next step is the most important part.
So asking yourself, is this something that I want to do for the rest of my life? Number 2, coming up with an exit strategy. Okay, I think that's fair enough. Dan, this is, and in regards to a dysfunctional family, what's a plan of action for that? Are we contacting child services? You have a 14, 15-year-old that may be listening to this show. They're in a toxic, dysfunctional family. Do you go to a trusted family member? What do you do for that 15 or 14-year-old that's in a dysfunctional family?
Yeah, reaching out to someone that can be your advocate. In every family, there is always going to be something. Parents are going to get upset with you. They might yell at you. But if that's your basic life, then maybe saying something is very important. If there's physical abuse, if there's sexual abuse, then reaching out to someone is really important. And I don't even like saying these words, but if you're in a situation where there is a lot of physical violence happening and you reach out to a priest or a family relative, and now you just spilled the beans on what's going on in the family dynamic, there could be repercussions that happen because of that, which, I don't even like saying that, but that really is the truth of the matter. And so if it's a really bad situation, then you need to really convey the urgency of, I'm telling you, but if they find out, I need to be taken out of this situation.
Okay. All right. So we got dysfunctional family, toxic relationship, narcissist, empath. We got the book. We'll definitely put the book details in the show notes. Biggest thing for me was definitely, if someone is in a narcissistic relationship right now, what are 2 things they need to ask themselves? I think that first question, the first of the 2 steps you gave us, is this something I want to do for the rest of my life? I think that's a huge question.
It's huge.
Because it separates you from the relationship and just look at it through its totality. So I thought that that was really big. Do you have any anything that maybe I should have asked, or anything that you need to share with us before we wrap up?
Um, no, I'm pretty good. I mean, I think the biggest thing is, for anyone that might find themselves in a challenging relationship, that they remember that it's important to love themselves and to honor themselves and respect themselves. And many times, if you're in one of those kind of situations, you get beat down, beat down, beat down, beat down, and it's almost impossible to honor yourself because you're so busy in that 90-10 thing, taking care of the other person. But I think, with that question, is this what I want to do for the rest of my life? Makes it so that we can start getting our power back. And when we start getting our power back, we can start to honor and nurture ourselves so that we can start moving forward into having a much better and happier lifestyle.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Rita. Before we let you go, most of our listeners are avid readers,
Mm-hmm.
and I know it looks like you got a little library over there.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously we know, if you can, I'll also leave the details I didn't know you had 5 other books as well. So we would just like to know, what's 3 book recommendations that you can give us?
I mean, as far as this,
anything, any 3 books.
Yeah, I have to tell you that this book was really kind of out of my niche writing. Well, actually, one book that I found really good, and hang on, I have to look it up. It was, all right, I got nothing. It would take me forever to kind of figure that out. You kind of caught me off guard with that.
Yeah, I know. We like to do that. Do you have one book that you've ever read in your life that you could leave us with?
I mean, one book that I found in this topic very helpful was Stop Walking Around on Eggshells. And actually, where I found some really great information and I felt really helpful wasn't in books, because there was just so much, but was going online and surfing YouTube. There is so much information. Like I mentioned, Lisa Romano, I thought that her videos were excellent. I haven't read her books, but her videos are excellent.
I think I've seen her videos too.
Yeah. There is Alan Robards, I think, who I really enjoyed. And then there's a series that I've just started, and I don't remember the person's name, but the series is called The Adult Chair. And it really talks about working on, those other people kind of talk about dealing with relationship stuff, where the adult chair really starts working on what's going on inside of me and how am I reacting and how can I react to things and interact with things in a more healthy way. And so that's a new one for me, but I've been finding it insightful, really insightful.
Awesome. Now, I know you have to go, but I'm looking at your cover of your book, The Dysfunctional Dance of the Empath and the Narcissist. You have the lips sewn, it looks like it's sewn together. Yes. Why is that?
Well, individuals that, suffer from a history of abuse stand silent in their shame. And they find themselves unable to communicate what's going on in their inner world to other people, and more importantly, to their abuser. And so they stand in mute witness to what is going on around them. And I just found that imagery to someone that has been through that situation really told it all.
That's a beautiful, I love the picture. Love the cover. Thank you for sharing, Dr. Rita. Again, like I said, we're going to put this up. It'll be on iHeartRadio's, Apple Podcasts, Spreaker Radio. I'm going to put it on Facebook as well. We'll get some comments. And if you're, if you could give us some more of your time, maybe 3-4 months when I could come back with some questions from our audience, that'll be great as well. But other than that, ladies and gentlemen, till next time, continue to be.